Hi, everybody. Well, when all else fails, the iPad always seems to work. So thank you all for being here. I'm going to give you a nice view, not of my face, a nice view of the lake if I can manage it. Anyway, how are you all doing? I'm sorry that I had so many difficulties getting started today. Anybody there, and can you hear me? Hopefully I'll be able to tell. I'm going to probably go here and look on Facebook over here, so I'll be able to get your comments, because I'm not able to see your comments. So there's Bill. Bill's there. We're going to try this again. And as I mentioned, my name's Hank Linderman. I'm running for Congress. Here we go. This is better. Hi, Mark Andes is here. That's so great. Hey, everybody. In order to keep up with the comments, I think what I'm going to do is kind of keep an eye over here to the computer, and hopefully I should be able to see your comments, but we will see. There we go. I've got that. Now I wanted to talk to you about a whole bunch of things today, and I go through all this work and prepare it, but sometimes it falls apart. It's just the way it is, you know. So I have a friend that I worked with in recording, and he said you must dominate the technology or it will dominate you, and boy is that the case. So I'm doing my best. I've got the backup plan already in place, and I'm going to be able to look at the computer here and look at some of what I had prepared for you. Let's talk about the numbers, because they are not good. Hi, Nancy. How are you? Hi, John. I'm not going to be able to I don't have as clear a view of the comments that are coming in, so I'm going to try and arrange that so I can keep track of what you all are saying to me, but it's a little difficult. Anyway, all right. I'm looking at worldometers, and there's Barbara. And Barbara, you know, this will be the third time I'm trying to thank you for all the help that you give to the campaign and to me, and it really means a tremendous amount. Barbara has contributed multiple times, and she's here almost every day, and it makes it easier to show up here, and it makes it easier to do this job, to know that there's help from you all. Hi, Michael. I'm glad you're here. And we're going to be talking about the future of work. Once again, if you haven't seen this before, I'm the Democratic nominee for Congress. You know, the primary was yesterday, but I didn't have an opponent, so I'm already the nominee. And I'm one of, it's interesting right now. You know, we've been paying attention to that Senate race. Hi, Judy Walker, how are you? Hi, George. We've been paying attention to the Senate race that's been going on in Kentucky. We're trying to figure out who will run against Mitch McConnell. And there were, I think, 20 candidates, including a bunch of Republicans. But the top three candidates in Kentucky on the Democratic side are Amy McGrath, Charles Booker, and Mike Breuer. And it's very interesting because we've had such an unusual primary that after the George Floyd murder and, of course, the Breonna Taylor murder, these terrible incidents, the issue of Black Lives Matter has come very much to the fore, and we've been seeing Black Lives Matter protests and demonstrations. Someone told me today about a Black Lives Matter event that they went to, and there were no black folks there. It was all white people, and it was a lot of people. So the message has gotten out, and there's a tremendous amount of support for it. And that really helped Charles Booker's campaign, and apparently they are in a toss-up right at the moment. Who knows who the winner will eventually be? We also had early voting and absentee voting. In Kentucky, we're pretty restrictive about absentee voting. You have to have a good reason. You can't just say, I don't feel like it. But this year, you were allowed to apply, and they sent out hundreds of thousands of absentee votes. Now, I spoke to one person who said, wow, I would have made my vote differently if I'd waited. I mailed my vote in early. So that's going to be one factor. By the way, there's not going to be a lot of reporting about this because they're going to wait until they've got complete results. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I think that maybe it's a better idea to be giving, incomplete results. The balloting has ended, but Anyway, it's fascinating. So we've got about a week, 6 more days. So the 30th is when we're going to hear who actually won. And so in the meantime, we're in kind of this funny time between, like the day after Christmas to the day before New Year's. It's this funny time that's we're just waiting. So anyway, let's get back to some numbers. The bad news is, and I'm looking at worldometers. Hi, Butch. I'm glad you're here. I'm looking at worldometers for yesterday, the 23rd, and we had been seeing kind of generally declining. Hi, Londa Crenshaw. How are you? I haven't seen or heard from you for quite some time. Londa and I played music at some of the same clubs way back in the 70s, I guess, and 80s. Anyway, we've been seeing deaths decline, but new cases increase rather dramatically. And yesterday, for example, we had 36,000 new cases here in the United States, very serious. But the deaths had been declining. They were at a still unacceptable, 300, 350, 360 per day. Well, today they jumped right back up. They're at 863 deaths for yesterday. And we are seeing just huge increases. And I took a look at where the noise is going on. Hi, Loretta, how are you? Is in states like California and Texas and Florida and, let's see, Arizona. And all of them, hi, Brenda, glad you're here. All of them had more than 3,000 new cases yesterday. Very serious. California, 6,500, and Texas, almost 5,400. So we're not at all finished with this disease. Hi, Terry. How are you? I'm glad you're here. In fact, you can go look at Johns Hopkins website, and they show you a breakdown that shows California, Texas, Florida, and Arizona are just screaming upwards. California's been coming up pretty strong, but fortunately New York is staying down, but we all need to be careful. Yes, hello, Brenda. Yeah. So, by the way, that reminds me, when you go out, wear the mask. Keep 6 feet away from the people that are in your vicinity. If you got to be closer than 6 feet, make it short. Wash your hands. I think the mask is one of the best ways that you can protect yourself. And when I wear a mask, it's to protect you. And when you wear a mask, it's to protect me and the rest of us. So I hope you'll please do that. We're also seeing yesterday, apparently, there was some states were breaking their virus records as the caseload grows. So it's a bit of a mess. Let me see what this says about Mississippi. Prepare for overwhelmed hospitals by fall, and that's in Mississippi. So, and I had all these great pictures lined up. I had all the headlines. I had this all worked out, spent hours doing it, and then, of course, the computer's really not happy. But someone sent me, a friend, Chris Witzka. Chris, by the way, runs a nightclub called the Odeon, which is in Louisville, and Chris has been a big help to the campaign. In fact, we did a Matt Bevin retirement party at Odeon last year, and we had 23 bands, I think, in 5 hours or 6 hours. It was just fantastic. But anyway, Chris sent me something, and here's the headline. A herd immunity rock festival is going to be happening in July. Static X, Non-Point, Dope, and more to play. This is going to be going on in Wisconsin. They're going to be doing a festival, an outdoor festival, and it's called the Herd Immunity Festival. This seems like just a terrible idea. Well, I want to go deep in something. And by the way, before I get too much further, please share the broadcast. It makes a big difference when you share it to your friends. It really, really increases things. And, I've been talking about the Contract for Rural and Working America. I've got a copy of it right here. It will be backwards to you all. Can you read that? Anyway, you can get your own copy of the contract, and I'd be very interested in what you think about it by going to our website, hank4ky.com, and you'll see the Contract for Rural America, and you click there and you can download the PDF and print it and have a look at it. But I'm going to be on Terry Miner's show in just a few minutes. In fact, after I finish this live, I've got to start preparing for that. So it's now coming up on 4 o'clock. Hi, Jack. How are you? Hi, Diana. I'll be on at 5:35 Eastern, which is 4:35 Central, and there's a link on the webpage so you can join us. But I wanted to talk to you about the future of work. And this is from a great story that's today is on the New York Times, and it's called "Why Do We Pay So Many People So Little Money?" It's on the New York Times. Even if you don't have a prescription or a subscription, you might need a prescription to get the New York Times. It can be a little tough. Anyway, if you go to the New York Times, even if you don't have a subscription, they'll usually let you read something like half a dozen articles a month. And if you run out of them, you can open up a different browser, and that will let you read it as well. So the headline is, "Why do we pay so many people so little money?" And this is one of the things we talk about in the contract, that working people aren't paid enough, from minimum wage on up. So this is a very deep discussion about this. I'm going to try and go through some of the important points, but I'm going to go pretty deep on this. So if any of you are having trouble sleeping, maybe this will help. With notable abruptness, thanks to the advent of the coronavirus, much of the public has become aware of its dependence on hospital orderlies, cleaners, trash collectors, grocery workers. I've got relatives and friends that are grocery workers. They are on the front lines all the time. So, by the way, when you go to the grocery store, be nice to the folks that are working there. And this is a comment from a hospital worker, an administrative coordinator, 62-year-old man, Tony Powell. He says, "People are not looking at people like us on the lower end of the spectrum. We're not even getting respect. That's the biggest thing. We're not even getting respect. Nobody's listening to our voices. Maybe they'll wake up someday and see, oh, these are the people that are actually taking care of us. They're actually taking care of the people that need it." Thanks, Terry. I will continue to go deep. It is needed. I agree. It's fascinating to me, but I live, eat, and breathe this stuff every day. This is a quote from a paper that was done by a group of people that included Lawrence Summers. And Lawrence Summers is not one of my favorite people. He's former president of Harvard, and he was part of President Obama's economic team. He's been floated as a possible member of Joe Biden's team, but I'm not convinced he's a great choice. That's a whole other discussion. But even Larry Summers says, as part of this group, the American economy has become more ruthless, based on increasingly demanding shareholders, decreasing real minimum wages, reduced worker protections, and increases in outsourcing. This will have profound consequences for the labor market and the broader economy. In other words, it's not just going to affect those of us that are at the bottom of the rung here, the folks who are earning minimum wage or gig workers like musicians. I'm a musician, so I'm an original gig worker. Every musician virtually is sidelined right now, okay? Every single one of them. And ultimately, that sort of thing is also going to hurt the big economy. So convincing the folks that are in power that they really need to do something about this before it's too late, before it takes them down too. Hopefully they will figure that out. So this is another quote from a group that, these are some economists from the International Monetary Fund. "COVID-19 will raise inequality if past pandemics are a guide." This is another economist from the University of Palermo. He says, "Major epidemics in this century have raised income inequality, lowered the share of incomes going to the bottom." Here's an economist from MIT. He says, "Low-wage workers are doing really badly, and this will destroy our society." It's really true. Now, some of the obvious solutions, I talk about we should raise the minimum wage, and I've been saying, raise it to $15 an hour may not be sufficient. It may not be enough. Maybe it needs to be more like $22 an hour, which is more like what people were being paid in 1977, when you take into account the cost of living and, what your money can buy. But apparently there's a problem, because raising the minimum wage and protecting workers by increasing safety regulations will cause companies to do something different. If you raise the minimum wage, companies will go in the direction of automating new jobs, or automating jobs that people hold right now. Low-wage workers will be the losers. Now, until the pandemic, I religiously have avoided the automatic checkout counters when I go to a grocery store or to a hardware store or something. They've got all these during the pandemic, I'm using them, but I don't feel good about it because every time they put one of those up, that takes someone out of a job. And we're going to see increasing automation. And so this is another quote from an economist, and he says, if you were to increase the minimum wage by more than a few dollars, it will backfire even further. And this is just terrible. Now, there are other ways you can help, that we could help this if we had a government that would do the right thing. Dean Baker, who's a senior economist for the Center for Economic and Policy Research. It's a liberal think tank, but he says, on the short term, I would put universal child care and expanding Medicaid. Universal child care here in the contract for rural and working America, because if we have universal child care, that means people that aren't being paid enough money to be able to afford to pay for a kid to go to child care, they can take their kid and drop them off for quality child care that will also help that child be ready to go to kindergarten. Anyway, I digress. I apologize. So Mr. Baker also says that we need to reduce the barriers that block progress for African Americans. But he says, I've been around long enough to be a bit cynical about the prospects. Now let's dig into that just a little bit. We are in a Black Lives Matter moment, and America has gotten the word. And I think I told you all, I went to a couple of Black Lives Matter protests. One was in Danville, which was perfectly peaceful and respectful and great. And the one in Litchfield, which is the town I live closest to. Litchfield's like 6,500 people. And that one got a bit shouty. And you had a group, hi Roy, glad you're here. Hi Carol, I'm glad you're here. That group kind of yelled at each other. And there was a group of folks, maybe 4 or 5 of them, who held up a sign and were yelling, all lives matter. And the Black Lives Matter protest was significantly larger. Honestly, only one black man that was in that group. Maybe a second black person was there, I'm not sure. But he had a bullhorn, which was good preparation. And he yelled back, all lives can't matter until Black Lives Matter. So let's go back to Mr. Baker, the economist, because he said, I think that's one way that we need to focus is on dealing with the inequalities in employment that relate to black Americans. And he said he's skeptical about it. Well, why? Well, first thing he says is 5% of doctors in the United States, only 5% are black. Only 5%. And his quote goes on, if we're really successful in 20 or 30 years, maybe we'll get that figure up by 50% to 7.5% of doctors being black. That still would only be a bit more than half of their share of the population. I believe African Americans in terms of percentage of population in the United States are around 14% and a percentage. So it's going to take a long time to get to the point where we have black doctors representing a fair share based on their place in the population. So he suggests that for the time being we should focus on a reduction in the gap in pay between doctors and nurses assistants, and home healthcare workers, jobs that are much more likely to be held by black citizens, which would make more of a difference in the well-being of the African American community. That makes sense to me, but we also should be focusing on true social equality, where regardless of your race, regardless of your background, that you should have the opportunity to become a doctor if you need to, if you want to. There's some other economists here, and I don't know, I've got their names, Groshin and Holzer. And they are talking about some possible reforms related to another big problem. They say the forces of automation and globalization are not likely to subside anytime soon, potentially leading to flat wages, rising inequality. There it is again. All else being equal, these forces suggest ongoing rising wage inequality in the future. So we'll kind of wind this up. Yet another economist says the pandemic has put a spotlight on the critical importance of low-skill work. By the way, Apple Computer, which has been using tons of automation, and I think Tesla as well, have gotten rid of their automation. They've gone back to handwork. There's some work that automation can't do. And I think one of the things they said was, when it works great, but when it goes badly, oh my God, what a mess. This is a quote from Michael Podhorzer. He's an assistant to the president of the AFL-CIO. By the way, I've been endorsed by the AFL-CIO, and I'm very proud of that. Anyway, this advisor to the AFL-CIO said, "We are in a moment of extreme crisis if you are a working person." Don't kid yourselves. We really are. We've got $500 billion has been given to businesses by the Trump administration, by Steve Mnuchin is the one handing it out, and he doesn't want to tell us who he's given it to. There's no transparency at all. It's very dangerous. Anyway, this is the kind of crisis that can push the nation to the right or to the left. Or it can send us back to the anxious and unsatisfactory normalcy of a country locked into inaction by polarization. Now, this next part gets a little political, and that is what's more dangerous is what happened in Georgia with their primary. They saw a systematic effort to disenfranchise people who vote. And they suffered a spectacular collapse, leading to absentee ballots that never got delivered and hours-long waits at polling sites. And it appears that Donald Trump and the Republicans, the leaders of the Republicans, I don't want to damn all Republicans by this. I got Republicans that are friends, and they don't all support President Trump. But his actions right now, they are going to try and disenfranchise us. And in fact, it sure looked like that was going to be that way here in Kentucky, with only one polling place in the city of Louisville. But as far as I can tell, that went very, very well. They did a very good job, and so we'll see. We'll see going forward. Now, of course, I write letters to the editor, and a few days ago I had the #1 letter in response to a New York Times article. I had something like 800 people like it or something. This one I didn't do so well, but I was referring to this article. Remember, why do we pay so many people so little money at the New York Times? And I told them that I think it sounds like we're going to need to do some sort of globalization and automation tax, that if your company buys products that are, manufactured overseas, instead of tariffs, we maybe need to tax your company a globalization tax. And likewise, we could tax based on how much automation you use in your company. And that was my suggestion. I've got to send Terry something. Terry Miners has just said to me, "Hey, send me your contract." Let me respond to Terry real quick. You all don't mind, do you? Give me three. Because I'm going to wind up here really quickly. Thank you all for being here. I got to get prepared to be on Terry's show in about a half an hour, so hope you'll turn on. Let's see. It's going to be on WHAS, which I'm going to be starting at 5:35. So I hope to see you all there. Sorry to run away. I love you all, and I hope to see you very soon, like tomorrow. And tune into Terry's show if you can, and share all this on social media. It really makes a big difference. I love you all. Thanks for being here, and you take care. Have a great day. See you tomorrow.